Is it blinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi everyone. We're going to be talking about how to do your final on marker paper if you choose to do it that way. And I'm going to demo one of the views with marker paper. So notice that it's smaller. We have the marker paper is only 14 inches wide, so you have to window in a little tighter. You're still going to be using that grid that you've adapted, like I showed on the other demos, for the view. But I just wanted to give you a few rendering tips if you're using the paper. So I used the different microns, mainly the 03, to draw this out, just so the line would be somewhat light, and that way you can always go back and darken it. But hopefully you can see the background well enough. I've got my 2 French doors, this upper story with a glass rail balcony. This area is going to be a dining area right off the dining room that's covered, and then a foreground planter area. So what you want to strategize about is your light source, of course. So in this case, the light source is going to be coming from the left. And so that way I'm going to start to add, by adding my glass, I'm going to start with that first. So because this is out in the open, it's going to read lighter than this glass that's underneath the overhang. So I'm going to start with the lighter glass by taking my Cool 30 and just starting to work that in here on the glass. And you can use a straight edge for this if you want to get some streaks across. Now the reason I want to add some marker to the glass first is it can start to show me how I need to adjust my values to make those work. So I want it to feel reflective. In other words, I'm going to start by adding these streaks of 30. You can see my 30 picked up a darker marker, so I'm getting some streaks of something darker in there too, but I'll deal with that later. Okay, so it's starting to get a subtle wash of color, and see how I'm trying to put the diagonals on the direction the sun's coming from. So now I'm going to go a little bit darker with that. So I'm going to take my, that was the 10, sorry. Now I'm going to take the 30 and use that. I thought that looked light. But see, now the 10 could be my blender coat, so that's good. It's making the 30 run a little smoother as I apply it. So see how I'm trying to make it look a little darker around the edges, as if it's reflecting the value of the door down into the glass, and then leaving this part kind of broken and lighter with these streaks coming across. Remember, you don't want the streaks to look too picket fence, meaning you don't want to have them spaced too evenly, because that will defeat the purpose of feeling like light's hitting it. If it looks too, you want it to look a little more amorphous, if you know what I mean. So here we go, taking the 30 across again on these streaks to start to get that feeling of the glass reflecting across. And you can layer this too. So see how I've left a little shimmer in the bottom, like there's light hitting this and kind of shimmering up into the window. Okay, so now up here, see how the bottom is behind this other glass partition. So I'm going to use a little lighter touch for the glass here, so it looks like I'm seeing the glass through the partition, if you know what I mean. And then I'll go heavier valued up here where you can see it without that interruption of the glass partition. Okay, so you want to feel like this looks lighter and that looks more pronounced because you don't have that barrier in front of it. Okay, now we're looking at the glass here inside underneath the overhang. I want to read that to read dark. So now I'm going to go as dark as 70 in here. Also give it a little contrast and drama up in these corners. I'm going to bring a little of that 70 over here to make my light fixture pop out from the background. So just feel like there's more glass extending across in this area. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is from that 70 wash. I'm going to take the 30 again. Just checking I got the right one this time. And start to smooth it across and down. Oh, I think this is the 10 again. Yeah, it's the 10. Okay, back to the 30. Okay, here's the 30. So again, the 10 is just acting like a blender, which is good. Helps if you have that problem with the marker staying streaky. That putting the base coat of a lighter color down first can help with that. So now I'm going to, speaking of which, I'm going to add another coat of 70 on top of that 30. So it can feel like this area again is reading dark. So remember, when you have outside glass, the interior lighting isn't as bright as sunlight. So glass in the daytime usually reads dark, and at night, of course, then it will read clear because the sun is not there, so the interior light will be brighter than the outside area. But typically people try to leave glass white, which isn't really how it looks. So you might take a notice of some photos of exteriors. Using a photo reference, of course, is always very helpful in getting things more accurate. So again, I'm just kind of filling in more of this 70 around to make these elements pop off the background and to make that look like the glass behind. So hopefully you're starting to see that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this feels like a bit of a jump, I'm going to put a little bit of the 70 in here too, right where I want it to feel like the windows or the door frames reflecting into the glass a bit. Let's fill in a few streaks here to make it sync with each other. Okay. And just I have made a mistake. This went over here, so the thing is not to panic. I'm just gonna take my blender, try to lift that out, and it'll get lost into the color I make the door eventually. Okay, so now I'm probably convincing you to use flimsy for your final. Because of course we know the marker paper is a little less forgiving to work with. Okay, so let's do the 30 one more time. In front of me. Oh. So remember, you can add second coats of the very same value, and that can help adjust, you know, things. So again, you just don't want to settle, just keep working it, and then that'll get you where you want to go with this. Okay, that's starting to read more like glass now. All right, I'm going to put one more coat of the 30 up here, just to, again, make it feel like it's sinking to the window, what's going on down below. Again, a lighter coat where I'm trying to make it read like it's above the partition, and a lighter coat below. Okay, so now we've got the glass started. Now I want to add in some of the accents with the wall tone. So again, if I think of the light coming this way, this wall is getting hit directly with light. This wall is going to read darker, and this wall is going to read a little bit darker. So now I'm going to take my French grays, I'm going to take my French 20, and I'm going to put it on kind of in a dappled effect to make it feel like the walls are plastered. And I'm going to leave it more white over here, just a few soft touches, and then go a little heavier handed on this side where I want this to feel like it's turning away from the light. So also a little heavier around the back of the bases. So it feels like it's casting a shadow. We'll get a little darker value there. Okay, even here where it's casting a shadow on the adjacent wall, on the ground. Okay, and then here inside the arch, especially this side, we'll read darker. And then this side of the arch will read darker. Okay, then up in here on the house. All right, so you're starting to see some value here. I might put a little bit of that up in this part too. I'm going to dot a little 20, and I'm going to blend it out with some 10. And I want it to read softer through the partition. And so then I'm going to put a little bit of 20 in the side of the door. Okay, so I started to add in some of the tile color, just experimenting with different things I'd like. And I decided I'm going to make it all a darker cobalt blue tile. I don't like the fussiness of the little dots. I'm going to go back in with the cobalt, and I'll go back in with some pencil to pop some detail into it. But by having the aqua in there, that's going to make the cobalt have some things to play with. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this all in. So the point of this is too, like, you know, it's always possible to change something when you don't like it. So don't be afraid to experiment and just play with things until you get it to where you like it more. Okay, so I'm already liking that better. So I'm going to do the same thing here with this tile. Just make it a darker blue, more dramatic. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and use my broad tip. And I think I'll put some streaks on with it too. Just kind of working the tip into the edge. So remember, you can vary the color too, so it can feel like light's shimmering on the tile. For that reason, having that little pattern in the back is not a bad call, because it kind of gives it that feeling of reflection. The other thing that it's going to do for me, having this darker background, is going to make the water pop more. That little bubbly water coming up in the foreground here out of the urn is my water feature. So it's going to help set that off a little more. Okay. Just have to cut in around the shape. Hopefully you can see that okay. Now, this is where you can take your fine point and just, you want to make sure you get a crisper edge. Just kind of work it in some of those corners. All right, so now, yeah, I like that better. So now I'm going to think about adding in some pencil tone to it next. But first, let's add in a little bit of the color over here for the ocean. So I'm going to take more of that cobalt here and bring that across there. See how the ocean comes up to your eye level? So I'm going to go ahead and add that in, but then break it up as it moves toward me. So it kind of implies some movement or white caps on the water. You don't want too much motion in it though, because then it's going to feel like it's pouring into the house. So I'm also going to add a little bit of that aqua into the mix just to blend it to my color palette. Especially here where it's kind of coming up to the shallows. Okay. All right, and then for the background hill, I'm going to go ahead and take some of the French 20 and just add in some shading. Okay, so I'm going to add some, same thing with little 40. So it looks like the hillside has some depth to it. Now what's going to help that set off is like maybe adding some color of the land. So I'm going to take some of that brick beige again. And I'm going to take some of the cream. So it just feels like the cliff has some kind of striations of light and dark value to them. Some rocks here at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to put the sky in with a pencil to keep it soft. So you always want to just assess and see, you know, is it reading well? What do I need? I'm going to put some, notice I put the value in of the cushions facing away from the light. I put the cast shadow in. I'm going to add in some effects now with the pencil. But before I do that, I'm going to go in with one more coat of the Cool 70 with a fine point and just pop some of the edges in the glass with a straight edge. So again, it feels like the wood is reflecting into the glass a little bit, the thickness of the wood. And it also helps just crisp up the edges a bit. I'm also going to do that, come back in with some reinforcing later to do the same thing. Okay, so it just gives the glass a little more presence. Okay, same thing up here. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to do on this view is I'm going to take some French 90 and I'm going to do a bronze band across this element. So this is the French 60 actually. I'll start there. So it feels like this is facing the light. I'm going to make lighten it up a bit. Let's see if I like this tone first. Okay. And I'm thinking I'm liking the 60, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put the 60 here. But I'll put a couple coats on just to darken it a bit. And then the same thing across the front. And use a straight edge. Kind of sloppy with it. Now I'm going to do the same thing at the top of the glass to make it look like a bronze trim at the top. See my fine point? Okay. And just a little bit here. Do a second coat. Okay. All right, now I'm going to use that same to show the bronze, on the light fixtures and the sconces. And I have this kind of Moroccan lamp hanging in here, so I'm going to use that to show like the weathered bronze in the lamp. Okay. All right. Now we're ready for some pencil. Okay, now we're going to add some pencil to the mix. So first of all, I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to use a pencil accent tone to create some stripes on my upholstery over here. You want them to follow the contours. I'm just laying in the repeat first, and now I'm going to make the stripe bigger. And see how I already had the marker on there to give it the value. So I'm just using the pencil to give it a pattern. And do the same thing on this one. Okay, so then I'm going to add in a little darker marker on the one side. Just helps sort out what you're seeing there. Okay, and now I'm going to take another color pencil, say this brown tone, to do this wicker effect. I'm going to get it, make sure it's sharp. So again, you want to keep sharpening the pencil so it stays nice and sharp and doesn't, so you don't lose your texture. So keep sharpening it. So now I can go back in and take some blue and dull the brown a little bit on the side of the legs underneath the chair seat. I'm going to take some white, shimmer a little highlight on this base, because I was thinking of it as a bronze base, so it's going to reflect a little light. Take some brighter green to the plant, mix it with a little of the blue. I'm going to use this blue as an undertone element on a lot of things, so that'll be one of my unified colors. Oops. So I'm going to put a little of that blue inside this plant. Maybe a little bit on the pot. A little reflected color here. So remember, that's what's going to bring these markers to life, is bringing in those pencil flavoring effects. Okay, so I could do the same thing on the plant. I'm going to bring in a little bit of this blue here and there, just to enliven some of the tones. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit to the vases on the shadow side, to give them a little more dimension. Also to feel like maybe this blue is reflecting over to the glossy pot, right? See how that gives them a little more lively appearance. Notice how I'm following the contour of things with the pencil strokes. So I'm going the direction of the plane. Now I'm going to take a little of the green, like a deeper green, and shade that into the bronze. Just to make that feel like, you know, the metal by the beach gets a little patina on it. Giving that a livelier look. Okay, now I want to take the sharp white pencil and add in my grout lines on the tile. So I already have them in there in black, but I'm just going to add a few white. Remember, you want to keep your pencil points sharp. And remember, you don't have to do every grout line, just a few here and there, so your viewers can see what the material is. So I'm going to see if I want to do a few here and then kind of fade them off going down the side here. So that way it feels like maybe this is getting a little lost in shadow. I am going to throw a few on though, just so your eye can complete the pattern. Okay, and then I might do the same thing with this arched way. Just add a few grout lines in. I'm going to make sure my pencil stays nice and sharp. So it looks like I have the same tile here now on the arch, perhaps. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some reflected color. So I'm going to take some of the blue, add a little streaks in the window. Just here in the focal point area to enliven those windows. Maybe take a little of the white back in here. Okay. Now, I also added some of this. I'll do it again so you can see what I did. I used some of this light cerulean blue, and I did a few diagonals on this glass partition up here to make that feel like it's reflecting some of the light and the color of the sky. Remember, you don't want those to be too consistent. You don't want it to look like a picket fence. So just enough so that it feels like it's reflecting the value. Do you think I can just keep going, honey?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so, sorry, that's the timer. Just let it go. Okay, so other places I could add some pencil then would be to the water. So I'm going to take a little bit of the gray pencil for the undertone of the water. And then I'm going to take some blue. And then leave that top white where the water's bubbling. Okay, or I could take some soft brown pencil over here and shade in, feeling of the soft texture. And get this area up. Throw a little bit of that on the hillside. Okay, I'm going to take some green, the dark green again, that I used in the bronze. Make sure that the white's sharp. And I'm going to use a little bit of that to pop a few of the fronds in the palm tree. Okay. Then finally I'm going to take this lighter green, put some of that into the plant, along with some of this dark blue. Now, the last step is I'm going to add in some, I can add in some of the opaque white. So remember that you want to test it out on a scrap of paper to make sure the point's working well. And I'm going to dot a little of that opaque white here where we've got the fountain here. So it looks like the water maybe is kind of dripping down the side.